Hello, everybody. So yes, there are some interactive parts during my talk, so feel free to get ready by opening up some sort of drawing program like Paint, that sort of thing, or you can old school it with pen and paper, and bring up Twitter or an empty browser tab. So, my name is Barbara, and I am a co-founder and tech lead for Willet. We are a Waterloo, Ontario, Canada based startup. And we are currently doing amazing things to socialize online shopping right now. And I am a huge fan of collaboration. And so I would really love it if you could turn to the person who you're sitting beside, preferably somebody who you don't already know, and introduce yourselves. Say your name, what it is that you do, and I'm going to give you 30 seconds to do that. Five, 4, 3, 2, 1. Everybody stop. Please. Thank you. And there is a reason for this. It'll come into play in a second. Because I would very much like to do a thought experiment with you. How I would like you and your new friend to design for me a flying car. And I'd like for you just to sort of mock something up if you can, and I'm going to give you a minute to do so. Go. Five, 4, 3, 2, 1. Stop. Time's up. Whoa, whoa, stop. Who thinks they have the best flying car? Sweet. If any of you took digital copies of these, I would love for you to tweet them out right now to let the other people in the conference see the things that you've been doing. But I'd like to go into some of the thought process that you did when you were designing these things. So, is building a flying car really just as simple as taking a car and throwing some wings on it? So you'd end up with something like this. Sweetest car ever. You could totally see that flying through the night, right? Or did you design something a little bit more practical like this? You know, sort of resembles a plane a little bit more. Or did you go totally out of left field and make a machine that was similar to this guy's? He put a giant fan on the back of a vehicle and a giant parachute on top, and apparently it actually does fly. Well, really, if we sort of extract away and consider what was done in these previous examples, we started with a car, and we started adding things to it. Put some wings on the top, maybe a propeller, maybe a jet engine to make it go faster. This is my version of a flying car. So this is one way that you could do it. Or some of the more innovative people would have just started from the ground up, tossed away that initial notion of a car. They would have just built a flying vehicle. And so if we compare this flying vehicle to my ridiculous monstrosity, out of these two, which of the two vehicles do you think is really going to succeed as being the best flying car? My money's on this one. Well, it's parked right there. Because if you think about it, what you did when you were going through, well, what I did when I was going through this process, I suddenly ended up with a machine that was no longer useful at being a car, since it doesn't actually fit in a road because the wings are too wide. So you can't drive it. It's not really effective at being a plane or an actual flying machine because it's clearly not aerodynamic. And so this roundabout example is showing you is, because we're all here to learn about viral loops, is when you're building a product, you can't just tack on all these additional things and suddenly you have an inherently viral product. The main point is that your viral loops need to be core to your actual product. And so I will illustrate this with a few examples. Earlier this year, I built TrivBot. It is the most amazing social trivia experience that nobody has ever heard of. So you could sign up with all your friends and suddenly competing against them on daily trivia questions to find out who out of all your friends is the best at trivia, who is the smartest. So it looked something like this, and it was going to go viral. I was going to get so many users so quickly because I had an invite button on the bottom of every page. Well, I can tell you, none of my users actually used this. And so I'm sitting at 25 users, all of my friends who I'm currently playing with. I also built Willet Social this year. Take any tweet button on your site, replace it with our Willet Social tweet button, and suddenly you have analytics and data about the people who are tweeting from your site. So we launched this. This is our landing page. We launched it earlier this year on Hacker News. And fortunately for us, we sat on the top of Hacker News in the top 3 spots for the better part of an afternoon. We got over 14,000 page views, 8,000 uniques. And we thought we were also going to go viral on Twitter because we had this button right on our landing page. People were clearly going to click through Hacker News and start tweeting about us, and we were going to go viral and take off. Well, out of the 14,000 page views and 8,000 uniques, we had 93 people click on this. 93. Now, we'll contrast this with companies like Skype and PayPal. So users of the system, in order to be able to use it with other people, they had to invite those additional people to come into the system. So if you wanted to chat with someone on Skype, whoever you wanted to talk to had to become a user of Skype. Whoever you wanted to pay on PayPal had to become a user of PayPal. Skype took off. Or, think about Tagged. It was considered to be the #1 growing social network in 2007. When you initially signed up for Tagged, you filled in all of your personal information, and then you're brought to a screen where you're prompted to enter your login information for your email provider, and they would immediately send out invites to your entire address book, getting your friends to come and join you on Tagged. Tagged took off at the pink line. Or Kick Mobile. So they launched, and in 2 weeks they had over 2 million users. When you initially installed the app on your phone, all of your address book was scanned again, and you never needed to add contacts into Kick. It was already pre-filled for you. So Kick definitely took off. And so when we look at what the apps that I built did and what these 4 successes did, really the main difference is the fact that the viral loops were core to those latter 4 apps. So Rolef Botha, who is a VC who backed PayPal and YouTube, has this great quote. He says, "Forget about adding viral to your marketing to-do list after your product is already on the market. You need to bake it into your business model from the beginning. Viral isn't something you can just make happen. It has to be inherent in your product." Now, consider this first line. Just talking about a marketing to-do list. And I just want to say This is the Future of Web Apps conference. I am an engineer by trade. I know very little about marketing, very little about advertising. I'm not a salesperson. So I want to talk about how we as engineers can actually do this sort of magic stuff that marketers have been doing. So we consider marketing and viral marketing and branding is really about doing something cool in your product, and people start talking about it and traffic jumps. Tends to be more of a one-off situation. The traffic will die back down. What I want to talk about is making viral action. And this is much more about the mechanism that allows people to continuously and more easily share things about your product. And so with this in mind, this is the definition we're going to work with. So a viral loop is the steps a user goes through between entering your site to inviting the next set of users for your site. There's no fancy marketing mumbo-jumbo in this. It's very straightforward. In fact, we can model it using a state diagram. So we have users coming and entering your site. They will perform an action or some series of actions, and then they will be prompted, invited, incentivized to share something, some core part about your product with their friends or with acquaintances, and the cycle continues, and you have your new users doing the same thing. We'll go to Adam Pennenberg, who is a writer for Fast Company magazine, and he wrote the book, The Viral Loop. He says, simply by designing your product the right way, you can build a billion-dollar business from scratch. No advertising, no marketing, that's good. No need for Salesforce, that's really good as well. And venture capitalists will kill for a chance to throw money at you. I like money, how about you guys? So are any of you Star Trek fans out there? A few of you. So is this familiar? This is a Borg, and Borg spread virally throughout the Star Trek universe. Or if you're not familiar with Star Trek, you can think of it like zombies. Zombies infecting people with their virus, and that spreads. But specific to the Borg, as they were doing so, someone was saying, resistance is futile. Well, think about it. What if we could actually engineer our applications and our products such that it was futile for non-users to be able to resist it? What if everybody just had to get on it? That would be extremely powerful. And so this is one of those cases where the theory is actually simple, but it's the engineering behind it that's hard. But that's a good thing, because as a coder, we like working on hard technical problems. So that's a good thing. So I'll start with some theory, and I'll just lay out a bit of a groundwork that you can start off of, and then we'll put some engineering stuff on top of that to talk about how you can actually build these. And so the theory we're working with is Stanford professor B.J. Fogg's mass interpersonal persuasion. So he has 6 key points about how things can persuade massive amounts of people through interpersonal means. And the first one is persuasive experience. So we need to be able to convert passive bystanders into active users and advocates of our products in order to get more users. So it's all about changing attitudes and behaviors of people who are not in your system to convert them over. And so for this, we can consider, well, what makes content viral? Well, if I knew that, or if you knew that, the presentation would be done. We'd be off, we'd have millions of users and billions of dollars, and we'd all be successful and happy, right? Okay, well, so I can't tell you what actually makes content viral, but we can consider 2 things instead. What do people share online, and why are they sharing it? So we'll start with what do people share, and there's a lot of research around this concept called a social core. And what this is it's the part of your business, or the part of your application, the part of your product that people are the most likely to share and talk about with other people. And I realize that's a very roundabout definition where I'm using the words in the term, in the definition. So here are some examples. On Facebook, the social core is a user, a person and their attributes, their pictures, their interests. On YouTube, a social core is a video. On SoundCloud, it's a sound. On e-commerce websites, it will be the products that are being sold. So it's those things that people are more likely to talk about. So Facebook and YouTube have all of these additional things like comments and that sort of thing. People aren't necessarily sharing and talking about those. They're sharing about the core of the product, the social core. So this is what people are sharing. Now, why are they sharing it? Well, there are lots of reasons, but at Willet, we've sort of broken it down into these two high-level concepts. First one is the "it's so cool" principle. You get your early adopters on there, and they just love some core factor of your application, and they're pushing it out there. They're talking about it nonstop. And then once you have enough gravity, traction, and momentum, it flips over. And it switches to the "everybody else is doing it" principle. So everybody else is already on your system. Everybody else is already benefiting from it. Why aren't you in here benefiting from it with the rest of us? So we'll use Facebook as an example for this. When Facebook first started, it had definitely the "it's so cool" principle. It gave college males a very easy way to look at pictures of hot girls on their campuses. This was the first time they were able to do this. They said, "This is the coolest thing ever!" And they were telling all of their friends about it, and it quickly jumped up. Well, now that a lot of people are on Facebook, we switched over to everybody else is on it. So if I post my pictures on Facebook and I want to share them with people like my mother, aunts, uncles, you say, well, you have to come on Facebook. You have to join Facebook, and then I'll share my content with you. So see, there's a change between why people are sharing the core part of Facebook, and that happens over time as your product grows and as you get more users. And then we'll move on to automated structure. So now we have this content, we have this experience that we want to share. You want to reduce all of the friction for your users to share it. So we need to structure it in some way so that your users can repeatably and reliably share it with other people. Go back to Facebook. Think back to the height of Facebook's app days when their platform was first released. And after you installed a Facebook application, this screen would show up on every single one of them, right? You had a message already structured for you, and you had pictures of all of your friends. All you had to do was click and then send it to them. And so you could send out an invitation, you could get new users for your system, and it was all structured in such an easy way that a lot of people just did it. They weren't clicking the skip buttons. They wanted more people in there with them. And it was structured so there was no friction. And people were distributing all of these experiences, persuading people to come and join them in this structured and automatic way. They were distributing them socially across huge social graphs. So right now, a quarter of the internet traffic is for social networking. Facebook has 750 million users, and each user has on average 120 friends. These numbers are huge. At this point in time, we have access to so many people. But there are some caveats. So on average, a generic wall post on Facebook is only seen by 20% of your friends. A generic tweet that you push out there, on average, is only seen by 10% of your followers. You might think, we have access to all of these great people, but very few of them are seeing it. Well, the technology doesn't actually matter. So long as you have some means to get out there and to contact people, so long as you have that channel, it doesn't matter whether it's Facebook, Twitter, Orkut, Google+, whatever. It just matters that you had this channel. I have an example for this, but I realize I might not be in the right country right now. But think back to the 1700s. The British were in the States, and they were talking. There were some talks in the works about the British invading. And so Paul Revere, what he did was he caught wind of this, and he hopped on a horse, and he rode across the States, knocking on people's doors and telling them the British are invading, the British are invading. And the message, quite literally, back in the 1700s, spread virally, thanks to this man on his horse. Now that was a lot slower, but you can see that it's not actually the technology, the medium that matters. You just need that channel. And so at Willet, we have a hypothesis. Thinking back to those stats, about 20% of your Facebook friends will see a post and 10% of your Twitter followers will see, we have a hypothesis that if you send out a direct message, if you post directly on somebody's wall, or if you do an @ on Twitter, we think that we'll get a whole lot more responses and more traction with those messages than if you just generically post on your own wall or if you just send out a generic tweet. Now that's our hypothesis, and it seems quite logical, but I have an engineering background, and so I'd really like to get some data around this. So I'd love to do an experiment with all of you. So if you could all either open up Twitter or open up a browser and navigate to this here. You will need the W's in there, unfortunately. My Lithuanian registrar is not being so helpful right now. So if you go to this here, it works on your phone, it can work on a computer. The page ends up being something like this. Just basically explains our hypothesis, and this is Willet Social that I was talking about earlier. And there's a button here. And the button will be, it's a tweet button, so we can send out a message on Twitter. And so what I would like for you to do is think of 2 people who you know personally who are top Twitter users who are not in this room right now. And I would love for you to send a message to those people. And there's a default message already in there, but if you're sending it straight from Twitter itself, if you just do hashtag FOA viral, yes. Share the link. Yeah, sorry. Hashtag FOA viral. I'm doing my own analytics tracking on all of this, and I also have an actual Twitter analytics company doing some help with it too. And what we're trying to do is, so you send this direct message to people on Twitter and ask them to spread it on in the same way. And I'm tracking to see how viral this actually gets and compare it to some data I already have about just generic tweeting messages asking to spread it on. And so I have a website where I will be able to share all this data, and I'm looking to write a blog post on it next week to make all of the results public. And so thank you very much for helping us out with this. I'll let you know how it goes. We all good? Still tweeting? Yes. Hashtag FOA viral, one word. Yeah, that's all you have to put, and we're tracking everything. And just pick 2 friends, reply them and say, could you spread this message on? Spread the hashtag on. Thank you. We good to move on? Ooh. Now I have everybody distracted on their computers. Y'all checking email and Twitter now? Okay, so we will dive back into the theory for a little bit. So we need to have rapid cycles. People need to be able to share these experiences out onto the graph very quickly. So we'll go back to our state diagram. Consider instead if it looks like this. You have a user entering your site, and then they perform an action, another action, another action, another, and so on. Well, it's going to take a lot of time for this share action to actually happen. And we don't even know for sure that it will happen because there's so many actions between the user entering your site to being prompted. Or consider this, where a user enters your site, they have to wait 2 months for some action to happen. And then they have to wait another 6 months before being prompted to share. There's a lot of time in there, so you don't even know if a user is going to share it there. There is a reason why real estate isn't viral. There's such a large cycle time here. And so this is a really key point of the presentation. You really do need short cycle times, either few actions in between a user coming into your site for them talking about it, or also both the time factor as well. But so After we have our users out there, we've crafted an experience, it's easy for them to send out, we have access to a channel. We need to be able to measure what it is that we're doing. And so for this, we'll turn to another marketing term. We've got your viral coefficient, your K factor. Well, we can just break it down and say these two terms are really just the average number of new users that any user of your system is going to bring in. And on average, the number will range. If it's 1 or lower, you're not doing so hot, you're down here. And then if it's 1 or above, you're growing how you want to grow. And so Noah Kagan of AppSumo gives this really simple formula for calculating it. X times Y, where X is the average number of invites that someone sends out, and Y is the average number of invite acceptances. So if you want to get more users, if you want to up this number, you really only have to do one of two things. Either prompt people to send out more invites, give them more opportunities to send out invites, or have them send to more people at once. So I could have asked you to send to 3 people on Twitter instead of 2. Or just up your conversion rates. It's really that simple. So that's it. That's the end of the theory. Just to break it down. So we started with this experience to take non-users of our system, and we're crafting it in such a way to get them to switch over and become active users and advocates. And we do this by structuring everything for them, making sure that there's no friction for them to actually go out there and talk about it and distribute things socially across their huge social graphs in a very quick way. And then we just sit back and we measure everything and we work from there. Okay, so we have the theory done, and now we'll move on to the engineering. And so for this, we will turn to the internet's guru on viral marketing. His name is Andrew Chen. If you're not familiar with him, I highly recommend you check out his blog. But he has these crucial viral loop design stages. And so sitting there and reading through them, came to the realization that really it's just the lean startup of virality, or the lean viral loop. And so the first point is strategization. So when you are coming up with an idea for your application, for your product, you're figuring out your value proposition. What's the core thing that your users want? As Pete was saying, what are your customers' pain points? What do people actually need? But while you're doing that, you should also be thinking about what is your social core? When you're creating this product and you want people to talk about it, what is it about your product you want them to talk about? What is it that you think they're going to be talking about it? And then, when you're designing it, how are users going to move through? How are they going to enter your site? And then be prompted to talk about this social core. Now, we do have another hypothesis that not every product, not every app out there has a social core necessarily. So it might be that you're unable to go viral simply because you don't have this core in there. And that's still something that we're looking to test out, and I'll do that in my next presentation with all of you. So after you've strategized, well, now it's time to implement. This is what we like, right? Building it. We go from our diagrams to actually building this, and we'll do it in a very quick way. And while we're designing our core product, building it, we're also doing the loop at the exact same time. We're not waiting till the end and then tacking it on there. Really focus on your MVP. I know everybody's been talking about keeping it lean, that sort of thing. One recommendation I like to give is if you have a few different ideas for what you're doing, just keep them in separate repos so you can switch back and forth really easily and you don't have to worry about getting code muddled. Or if you're using a versioning system that has branches in it, just use branches for everything to really keep it separate. Okay, and then you launch. Launch fast and get your users even faster. If you have to beg, borrow, buy, steal, it doesn't matter. Just get people coming to the front of your funnel so you can start testing things out that way. And I really like an antidote that you hear from a lot of very big companies these days. They often admit that they are extremely embarrassed by the first iteration of the product that they released. And it was only after time that they actually felt good about it. And I can tell you, as somebody who releases web apps every couple of months, I'm very embarrassed by the first versions, but it doesn't matter because you have it out there, you have it in your customers' hands, and they're trying it out and you're getting their feedback and you're going from there. So be embarrassed by what you're putting out there because some of the best companies are also embarrassed. And then, after you've launched, so you're going to have a set of hypotheses and you're going to want to test them. So you're going to need a set of tools to test them. And so, you know, you can use Optimizely, you can A/B test, so you're split testing. But there's also a very large, I'd say, like movement right now into cohort analysis. It's been around a lot in statistics, medicine, but it's something that's newly becoming a hot field in terms of web development and studying what users are doing. And so is everybody here familiar with cohort analysis? Yes? No? Okay. Okay. For those of you who aren't, it's a bit of an alternative to doing your typical funnel tracking or your conversion stats on your landing page. It's looking at your users and segmenting them into different time slots for when they actually come on and initially sign up to your product. And you can do this either by a week, by a month, or whenever you release a new feature, you can segment them. And then it shows you their usage rates over time. And so you know if you had one version 1 week, you can compare it to how your other version is doing another week compared to your activation stats over time for those users who sign up at that time. And you can also look at things about some demographic information for where each of these cohorts are coming from. Knowing things like geographic location, time zones, that sort of thing, are all very useful to know where these people are coming from. And this all sort of feeds back into upping your K-factor, upping your viral coefficient, because people who are really working on these things, they've all built their own custom tools. They're all doing this internally, and they're all just trying to pull that needle up to tip over that one viral coefficient so they can just go viral from there. And so if you are looking to do this sort of thing, I highly recommend looking into cohort analysis. I know Kissmetrics just released something a couple weeks ago that looks really cool. And now the optimization stage, it can take a couple months. It takes a lot of time to get users through your system and to figure out what they're doing, especially if you're looking at on a longitudinal basis. And at the end of it, you have two outcomes. Either you're doing extremely well or you're not. And if you're not, go back to the drawing board, try it again. But if you're doing well, that's when you refine, polish, work on your user experience. Now you have time. You have users. Your viral loop is running along there. It's churning. You're getting new users. And this is the time for you to become less embarrassed. So that's the end of the engineering part. And so, like I said, it's all about keeping things lean and just pushing different variations out there and seeing what ticks. It's not necessarily about making small changes, making your call to action button red instead of green. It's about doing very large user flow type of changes and how people are using your system, figuring out, like drilling down into what that core of your product is that people are talking about. Once you have that nailed and you present that on a platter, in such an easy way for your users to share it, it really does just sort of take off. But, you know, there's no really set recipe for how to do that. It takes a lot of time, a lot of different work. Some companies I know who are doing this, they have entire teams devoted to the viral loops in their products. But I can tell you, you definitely shouldn't do anything like this. Don't start with your core, and don't add ridiculous things to it, because in the end you end up with a ridiculous looking product. Don't do something like this and assume it's going to work. Don't hide things away on a screen. If you really want to grow like this, grow like Kick Messenger did, from 0 to 2 million users in 2 weeks, then just remember that your viral loops need to be a core part of your product. And you do have to spend some time figuring out what that is and how it's all going to work together if you value proposition. Your short cycle times are absolutely key to getting the message out there quickly. And you need to have tools to be able to sit back and measure and analyze. Right now, we might not have those tools available to everybody, so you might have to build them internally, but that's a whole other technical problem that's really fun to solve. And so, my name's Barbara. I hope this was helpful to you. Thank you very much for your data and your tweets. I do really appreciate that. I'll let you know how it goes. And that's the end.